the reality is the Chinese industry has super scaled the EV lane. They do have a problem with overcapacity for sure, particularly on the gasoline-powered vehicle side. That's where the suddenness of the shift in consumer preferences has really put the disadvantage to the companies who overinvested in the legacy auto industry, and I think that's where the problem is most acute. There are markets, overseas markets for Chinese companies to expand to. Obviously, Europe is the one that's put up the most concern because of a domestic industry that it's attempting to protect. But there's ample markets outside of that in the global South, in the Central Asia region, in Latin America, for this capacity to find its way to the market.
Bill, there seems to be, just circling back to the domestic pressures, there seems to be a lot of finger pointing at BYD and claims that it's exploiting its market dominance to price vehicles below the cost of production. Is that the reality? Is BYD trying to squeeze out the smaller players?
Well, part of this is, what's happened is there were price supports in the market for some time. Those have been gradually, both price subsidies as well as tax benefits. As those were pulled back, the automakers, including Tesla and BYD, were very aggressive in saying, okay, we're going to keep the prices where they're at. And if BYD, who has a very highly vertically integrated supply chain and has a significant ability to scale, if they can leverage that as a pricing advantage, as a cost advantage, then they use price as a way of sustaining their capacity utilization. So I think that's what you're witnessing is just the flexing of the muscle of a company that has the ability to compete on price, giving that benefit to the market. And that's one for them. They have about 1 out of every 3 of all the NEV sales in China.
And I'm sure you've heard about this dynamic, Bill. We understand some car makers are resorting to some funny business to inflate vehicle sales, such as zero-mileage used cars, selling these cars in the second-hand market, used car market, at a sharp discount. This smacks of sheer desperation. At what point do you think Beijing is going to intervene to break this race to the bottom?
Yeah, they have called in the main perpetrators. By the way, that's not generally BYD. BYD is not the main instigator of this. These are some of the weaker players who have a capacity exposure, who are not as competitive in the market, that are basically, showing a sale and then immediately replacing those zero-mileage cars into used cars for sales at a discount. This pumps up their volume and is used as a way for them to generate capital market interest in the company because they're showing larger and larger volumes of sales. So the government has called the automakers in to say that this practice has to stop. So I think this will be some of the weaker players out there that are guilty of having practiced in this way.
Bill, you make an excellent point about commoditization, and that is happening at hyper speed. Where then does this leave the foreign car makers, including Tesla, in China, and how are they managing this intense price competition?
Yeah, to compete in the future of electric mobility, you need access to hyper-scaled supply chains. Right now, China makes 70% of the EV batteries in the world. They also have a dominant position in the core electronics and increasingly in the hardware and software integration categories. Foreign automakers are at a huge disadvantage, not having access to a highly scaled supply chain for the core components needed for the future of electric mobility in particular. I think that's where the auto industry globally has to step back and say, what do we need to get from China today that it has a dominant position in so that we can level that playing field? I say the global auto industry has to flip the script, learn how China caught up to the rest of the world in getting foreign companies to invest here. Now we need Chinese companies to bring their supply chains to the international markets so that we can get the benefits of those economies of scale.
I saw a statistic that China now has an estimated installed capacity to build nearly 50 million cars a year. That's twice as many as the industry can sell domestically. And as we discussed earlier, this is the result of a government drive, government incentives, subsidies, etc. So, Bill, if this is a largely self-made problem that's generated this race to the bottom, then the logical conclusion here is that Beijing has to step in or market forces have to step in. What is that shakeout going to look like, ultimately?
Well, the first thing that has to happen is you have to stop putting up new factories. I think what happened is there has been a lot of overinvestment in, not just by Chinese companies, by the way, by global companies who all came here and enjoyed 2/3 market share up until 2020 and the shift to EV began. Now there's a tremendous overcapacity, in large part in the gasoline-powered vehicle lane, which has shrank significantly. It's half the size of what it was 5 years ago. So most of that overcapacity that we're talking about is to produce cars that in China today are no longer in demand. EVs have a different problem. Underinvested by multinational companies, overinvested by China. So the 45 to 50 million units of installed capacity, yes, more than half the cars in the world could be produced in China. About 1 out of every 3 are actually made in China. And about 2 out of every 3 EVs are made in China. So the first thing that has to happen is you have to stop putting up new factories. The second thing that you have to happen is let the market determine who the winners should be. And the winners are the ones who are actually producing good quality and affordable electrified vehicles. Let those companies survive, let the other ones go combine with others and reduce the supply overpressure.
So there will be discipline, there will be rationalization. And there was a forecast from Alex Partners, I think it was. They predicted a shakeout in the Chinese car industry, which currently features 137 EV brands. Only 1 out of every 7 will be profitable by the end of the decade. Does that square with you, Bill?
Yeah, well, let's put the numbers. But first of all, there are about 100 left. There were more than that at the beginning. Of those 100, 10 sell 80% of the EVs, and 5 sell 60%. So you've already got a pretty good case for consolidation. You could take 90 companies who only sell 20% of the market, and you can eliminate them or consolidate them with others. I think the blueprint for consolidation is pretty clear. The winners have already been decided by the market.